So this presentation will present some basic findings that we were asked actually ahead of time to provide some information on civic engagement and belonging, internet usage and social media and economic trajectories. And so what I've done here is I've prepared some kind of basic findings that we often use at CIC, but the main thing here that I'm doing is I'm pulling out information on kind of from a data roadmap that we've developed at CIC. And so really that's kind of what I want to emphasize with regards to those concepts, the types of data sources that we're looking at and that we're using and where we want to kind of go in the future. So as you can see, the first slide is providing you some information on sense of belonging. And yesterday you saw some interesting findings where they used the General Social Survey. This is the General Social Survey as well. And it's also using the same one. It's the one on social networks in 2008. And so what you can see here in terms of immigrants is that over time, the sense of belonging to community is established immigrants have a higher sense of belonging to Canada than the third plus generations. And sense of belonging to local community shows convergence between immigrants and the Canadian-born population. We know, when you go underneath all this that the results are influenced by age and by region and things like that. But mainly what I want to highlight here is that our difficulty when we want to analyze some of your issues are around the sample, that we run into problems. You can see here I've had to split out between 1990 and back, mainly because we didn't have a very good immigrant sample in terms of size and in terms of geography, and also looking at things in terms of immigration categories. So I'm providing some basic results, but I'm also critiquing it at the same time and talking about some of the issues that we run into when we look at this type of data. The next one is on voting, and I'm expecting a lot of you have already seen this type of information before. Again, it's the same kind of thing where over time you're seeing immigrants are integrating into society. They have higher voting rates, and when you go down into the data, you can start to look at where they've come from, and you'll see that there are very different voting rates. But again, I would emphasize that we like finding these types of information. It's very helpful. But the data at this point just doesn't allow us to go a lot deeper. And then the third one is on civic engagement, and we were asked to look at this type of information. And you can see here I've put in two slides, one on perform unpaid volunteer work, and the other one on donations to organizations for charity. And again, we see some very interesting findings, and again, the time spent in Canada makes a difference. But you can see here that, again, the breaks that we have to make in the data, and I guess I'm just emphasizing the same thing. I'll just go right through here again, that we want to go back in and take a look more at this data, but at this point, it's a little bit difficult because of the sample. So I guess the main part of my presentation is about how we're planning on filling some of those gaps, because we find this data very interesting, but we need to do more with it. So the main thing, as I mentioned earlier, is that at CIC we have kind of a data roadmap, and you've seen information on iCare and different things like that, but we're also looking at surveys outside of CIC. So this is a focus on looking at things like the General Social Survey, and we saw that in 2013 they have a survey on social networks. I'll just flip to the next one, because then I'm going to make this fast so that you can all ask your questions to the real data people. But in terms of the social identity survey in 2013, when we heard it was coming out, we discussed, as did other departments with StatsCan, but we went into the questionnaire and we added some new questions in there because we wanted it to be relevant for immigrants, first of all. And so we had questions added on. It already had some very interesting questions. For instance, we've been asked to look at internet usage, and so we went in and on the internet usage, we asked for more questions in there. They have more things on frequency of use, the type of contact, how often you contact family and friends, and how you use it for social networks, how you contact, whether you participate in organizations through the internet, and all those. So there's a lot more detail in terms of the internet usage. And then we also added questions in on discrimination and symbols and values and different things like that. But still, you look then, as I was mentioning earlier, at the issue around the sample. So the sample is lacking. So what we did was we approached Statistics Canada to do a feasibility study as to whether or not it would be possible for us to link our CIC landing, or it's actually the IMDb, which is based on the landing file, but then linked to the tax files. And we asked about linking that possibly to the GSS sampling frame so that we could oversample immigrants in a less expensive way. And I'm happy to say that the feasibility study paid off, and it did allow us to find a way in which we would be able to go in and oversample immigrants, and the next step is what we've done. We sat down with Statistics Canada and talked to them about what would be possible with this general social survey as a test for this one to see how it goes, how we could go about oversampling immigrants. And so what we've done is we went forward and we've asked them to oversample for BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, and Atlantic, along with several key big cities, Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, Calgary, Edmonton, Winnipeg. And we've asked for information. We've stratified for that by detailed immigration category and by different periods of immigration. And the survey is in the field right now. And so we're waiting to see how things turn out. It's always around, you've heard here about response rates and things. The response rates are really what we're counting on to kind of push it through, but it should provide some really important data. And so we're also, the thing that we like about this is that the data is accessible. You saw yesterday that there was some research that was done using the social network survey. Well, this will allow people to go into the StatsCan research data centers and actually access the microdata, as there's always public use microdata, and the oversample is automatically included into that those at the Data Research Center, so it's all in one big package. The only issue that we have around what is going to happen is that the other piece that's missing whenever we do this analysis is immigration class. And the social network survey actually did ask on immigration class, but when we did our feasibility study, we went in and checked, and there's a lot of issues in terms around using that data. So after the survey has been completed, we then go back to Statistics Canada and ask about bringing over the immigration category questions from our file onto the main file so that people would also be able to do analysis in terms of immigration class. So these are pretty big step forwards in terms of the GSS and being able to, I mean, what we've seen here in terms of these national surveys is great because it's giving us a perspective on service usage. But in this context, you begin to understand about the Canadian born versus the second generation potentially, and also against recent to established immigrants. The other project that we've been working on is to do with the National Household Survey. And so what happened here was, as you know, there's been issues around the National Household Survey. So Statistics Canada actually used our landing file to certify the National Household Survey. So knowing that they did that, we sat down with them and discussed how we could actually get access to that linkage. And so that's what I'm working on at the moment, is bringing together tables that will link our landing file to the National Household Survey, which would then again give you information on immigration class by all that NHS data. And yesterday there was mention about wanting to get some information on geographic levels, like at a lower level. And that's something that I'm working on at the moment, and plan on, Statistics Canada has given it, a lot of their licensing issues aren't as they used to be. They've opened their doors, and so once we do that, we're able to provide it to wherever. We can provide it to P2P, we can provide it to other venues as well, and also through CanSIM, so that it makes that type of information about lower level geographies more accessible. Obviously, there's issues around the National Household Survey, but we'll make sure that response rates and all that are all included in the file so people have an idea of what they're working with. But this really does provide us with a big window, because not only does it provide us with information in terms of the immigration category, but it also provides us with information that we get from people as they come in the door. Things like what they intend to do, and then we have on the NHS what they're actually doing. And composition of households. There's a whole pile of different analysis that we would like to that we're working on, and we're working on tables for. Did I flip the, yeah. So you can see here some of the analytical tables that we're working on are citizenship acquisition, occupation education match, families, settlement profiles, official language minorities, mobility, and ethnic enclaves. So in terms, we were asked to talk about economic trajectories, and that's kind of where that side of the presentation fits in. It's just a quick presentation, but to let you know kind of what CIC is doing in terms of trying to bolster other data sources and get information out there on immigrants. Okay, thank you.